Maintain silence for some 5 minutes. Slokas.
तत्सवितुर्वरं रूपं ज्योतिः परस्य धीमहि यन्नः सत्येन दीपयेत्। आनन्दमयी चैतन्यमयी सत्यमयी परमी नमो भगवते श्रीअरविन्दाय। ब्रह्मानन्दं परमसुखदं केवलं ज्ञानमूर्तिं द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशं तत्त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम् एकं नित्यं विमलमचलं सर्वज्ञे साक्षिभूतं भावातीतं त्रिगुणरहितं सद्गुरुं तं नमामि। त्वमेव माता च पिता त्वमेव त्वमेव बन्धुश्च सखा त्वमेव त्वमेव विद्या द्रविणं त्वमेव त्वमेव सर्वं मम देव देव त्वमेव सर्वं मम देव देव।
Now, may I request Padmaji to kindly introduce Master Ramakrishna Ji to all of us.
आनमूलं गुरुमूर्ति पूजामूलं गुरुर्पादुका मन्त्रमूलं गुरुर्वाक्यं मोक्षमूलं गुरुर्कृपा गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु
to introduce Master R.K. is an audacious task. Sri Marala Sri Ramakrishna Masterji was born on 14th October 1948 in a small town in Andhra Pradesh. At the age of 5, Master R.K. went to live with his grandfather in Varanasi. The holy city Benares was the abode of several men and great scholars. Master Sri Ramakrishna had the advantage of visiting most of the illustrious scholars and sages like Gopinath Kaviraj, the master of solar science, Anandamayi and so on. He has been initiated into almost all the spiritual cultures, the Kriya Yoga of Paramahansa Yogananda, Transcendental Meditation of Maharshi Mahesh Yogi, the Kundalini Yoga of Yogiraj Vedadri Maharshi, and a host of others. All these reached a culmination when he met Pandit Sri Ram Sharma Acharya of Shanti Kunj Haridwar. Pandit Sri Ram Sharma Acharya and Mata Bhagavati Devi Sharma are the founders of Gayatri Parivar, Brahmavachya Source Samsthan, and host of other organizations working towards presenting the potency of Gayatri Mantra and Gayatri Yajna as a way of life. Master R.K. had by then completed his research work in electrochemistry and was awarded a PhD doctorate by the Benares Hindu University. Gurudev guided Master Sri Ramakrishna through several occult practices and types of meditation, thus treating him with a touchstone of divinity. Master Sri Ramakrishna was asked by his Gurudev to go to South India, where the activities of the mission had not yet started. He came to Guntur in Andhra Pradesh and executed his responsibilities as a lecturer and reader in chemistry in TJPS College, Guntur, till the year 2002. He introduced the World Regeneration Movement to the people of South India. Almost single-handedly, he set up a number of organizational movements in most of the cities and towns in South India. He has initiated people into a unique meditation practice called Samartha Sadguru Sparsha Dhyan. This meditation and contemplation establishes a contact between the aspirant and the Guru so that they may become active partners and followers of the Masters in the execution of the divine plan. Over the past few decades, Master R.K. has given extensive discourses on many topics. He emphasizes on their practical use to transform ourselves. Master R.K. is an exponent of scientific spiritualism. His teachings are a blend of ancient wisdom and modern science. His goal is to establish one world, one religion, one language. One religion is the religion of the human body. One language is the language of silence. Above all this, Master R.K. is a deep believer in Sri Aurobindonian philosophy of integral yoga. He has delivered several discourses on synthesis of yoga, life divine, essays on Gita, and commentaries on Savitri at various centers of Sri Aurobindo at Hyderabad and other parts of Andhra Pradesh. While guiding us in the path of world plan of Himalayan Masters, Master R.K. launched in January 2007 a daily chanting program of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam as an emergency to work towards individual growth of a sadhaka and thereby establishing unity and oneness in the world as also desired by our Divine Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Master R.K. emphasizes on collective effort and calls us all to join hands with the silent inner revolution, irrespective of our groups, gurus, haris, laymen, intellectuals, or without any preconceived notions. We all welcome you, Gurudev, our beloved Master.
Now may I request the Managing Trustee Sri Ajit Sarvish Ji to welcome Master Ramakrishna Ji by presenting a bouquet of flowers. वेदो परिषदो गावो दोग्धाको पालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। एतदस्ति भगवद्गीतायाः माहात्म्यम्। भगवद्गीता बहु महत्वपूर्णम् अस्ति। ब्रह्मसूत्राणि बहुक्लिष्टानि उपनिषदः बहुविस्तृताः, अतः संक्षिप्तम् अत्यन्तं हितकरम् इत्युक्ते भगवद्गीता एवम् ईदृशः उदात्तः विषयः अस्ति। एतदुपरि श्री अरविन्दसदृशाः अत्यन्तम् उत्तमरीत्या भाष्यं रचितवन्तः। एस्सेस् ऑन गीता इति आङ्ग्लभाषायां गीतायाः उपरि निबन्धान् लिखितवन्तः। तत् कथमस्ति, तादृशं गीतामृतम् अस्माकं पाययितुम् आगताः सन्ति अद्यतन वक्तारः महान्तः। अतः अहं पूज्यान् रामकृष्णवर्यान् प्रार्थयामि, कृपया श्री अरविन्दस्य दृष्ट्यां भगवद्गीता इति विषयमधिकृत्य कृपया प्रवचनं कुर्वन्तु इति। Now may I request Master Ramakrishna ji to kindly highlight important aspects of the Bhagavad Gita in the light of Sri Aurobindo.
गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुसाक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं यत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। Dear friends, because I am in a group where I need not go into the preliminary aspects of Aurobindo, I just want to directly go into the subject. But before I go into the subject, I want to make one point very clear about my opinion of Sri Aurobindo. What I think is that where Lord Krishna left the work unfinished in Mahabharata times, he finished it as Sri Aurobindo. So I think that sentence is enough as far as the light on Gita in the aspects of Aurobindo. So Sri Aurobindo is nothing but the continuation of a consciousness which dreamed of one world, one religion, which dreamed of world peace, which dreamed of Mahabharata. The basic structure of the dream, the basic aspects following which that great dream of a peace-loving country or planet Earth. When there is peace all over, there will no more any countries. There will be only one planet Earth. So, if we can understand Mahabharata, and then if we can understand the life of Sri Aurobindo, we come to some very certain and wonderful conclusions. I refer to the speech he gave in 1947 on the eve of India's independence. And that is exactly what I am trying to give to the world, tell to all my friends and those who care to listen. The message Aurobindo gave on the eve of India's independence is, the first point he said that his date of birth being August 15th, And India's Independence Day being August 15th is not a coincidence. This gives us an insight into the occurrences of various levels of consciousness Sri Aurobindo's life. This particular sentence in his speech where he said that India's independence on August 15th is because his date of birth was August 15th. He just gave a subtle hint, but we can now understand what he meant. Had Aurobindo born on March 5th, India would have got independence on March 5th. Are we able to understand the significance of this simple sentence? If India was destined to get independence on August 15th, then every date and incident of Sri Aurobindo is India's destiny. That is why many times in spiritual arena, I call it a fighting arena, people say that the Guru's life is the message. Let us not worry about what he talked. Let us not try to analyze and peep into the linguistic aspects of his words, but let us see how he lived his life and follow that life. So as I trace the Gita aspect in Aurobindo's life, please try to bear with me in this particular understanding. What I want to present to you is the Mahabharata war has not yet culminated. That which was started about 5,000 years ago is still being continued. And the real Gita was given on December 5th, 1950. I hope you understand the date. And the epitaph that Mother has written on his Samadhi, who worked for all of us, who did everything for us, just as Lord Krishna did everything for Arjuna. So we have a charity of great worth, whom we love and adore, but do we really make Sri Aurobindo our charioteer is the question that I am going to put to you today. We may be the disciples of Aurobindo, we adore him, we stand in awe with his gigantic personality, but that is not what Sri Aurobindo wants us, I think. He wants that he should become our charioteer. Our lives must be molded and guided by his divine touch. This particular aspect, before I go deeper into it, let me tell a few important aspects of integral yoga, not that you don't know, but let us together review it before we can go to the real spirit of Gita. Actually, integral yoga has its reference in Rig Veda also, and in certain Upanishad passages. But what Aurobindo did was, he made a right royal road, Rajavidya, Rajaguhyam, to reach that integral yoga goal. And when we call integral yoga, Aurobindo in his life have proved certain very important points which we should also follow and prove ourselves worthy of his knowledge. The first of all is what Aurobindo felt when he was in Darjeeling as a student in the convent. One day he was sitting in the benches of the school and he saw a great dark cloud descending on him and enveloping him. A great dark cloud descending and enveloping him in an English medium school. That is what we should understand. And when he went to London, England, the darkness continued. In his 12th year, suddenly he got an idea that he was very, very, very selfish. And from that day onwards, he decided to be unselfish. And we know Aurobindo, whatever he does it completely. So when he said that he wants to become unselfish, he becomes unselfish at the age of 12. But the darkness continued. And at the age of 21, in 1893, when he saw the India shore, suddenly he felt the light dawning on him. The dark cloud vanished. And for few months, he lived in that light. What does this mean? What is the message Aurobindo's life gives us? He is our charioteer, mind you, as per Gita. The same Krishna who was there has also developed from the overmind state to the supramental state. We know from Aurobindo's writings that Krishna belongs to the overmind level. And now when he comes back in the 19th century, he is paving a new path towards supermind, the race of supermen. So this incident, covering a period of 21 years in Sri Aurobindo's life, shows us that the materialistic life is like the darkness. You just don't know that there is a light. Even though we are alive, we are living, but still we know that we don't know anything. And probably that we know that we don't know anything makes us wise. Because as Shakespeare said, one who knows that he knows not is a wise man. So this darkness is also enveloping our lives. Wherever we are, whether we are in the ashram, or in the streets, or with friends, or in the cinema hall, or anywhere, we just don't know where we are heading to. And when he saw the shores of India, the mother gave him light. For him, India was not a piece of earth. It is mother. The mother which in the integral yoga is going to guide our every step, taking us in our hands. You see the correlation of what happened to Arjuna. He was stationed between the two forces, the Kauravas and the Pandavas. And suddenly he finds that he cannot fight. Many times in our lives also, we find that we don't like to fight. We just want to escape. And our escape from our responsibility as a disciple of Sri Aurobindo, that is what I am trying to put it. We have a responsibility towards Sri Aurobindo. And again we have to fight the Mahabharata war with him under his guidance. But what is happening in our daily lives, we find this responsibility we shirk, saying that we have this responsibility, I have that responsibility, I have to see to my family, I have to do this and to do that. And all of this, we cover it with a beautiful shawl of responsibility. We say I am not able to work because I am responsible to the society, I am responsible to my parents, I am responsible to my friends, children, etc., etc., etc. This darkness must go, and it will go only when we can understand our country as a mother. Here again, we have a letter of Sri Aurobindo to his wife to guide us. In that particular letter, which was seized at the time when he was arrested in the Alipur bomb case, all of you know, he wrote that he has 3 madnesses. So I want all of you and influence others also to become mad like him. And probably in India only we find a very peculiar thing, that those whom we call in the beginning as mad people, later we pray them and give them avatarhood. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa in his younger days was called as the mad Purohit, and later he became Bhagavan Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So these 3 madnesses, let us again repeat, and today let us take a pledge. That is what I want all of us to do. Because I came here not to teach, but to share and to develop a group of people who can live to the exact levels to which Aurobindo wants us to rise. His first madness was regarding money. He said that whatever money he used to get, he always felt that only a very small part of it is for his own personal utility. The rest must be like a trust that is being used for the development of India, and for us, for the development of Aurobindo's literature. When I say development of Aurobindo's literature, I don't mean that we are going to develop Aurobindo's literature, but I mean spreading it to all people. For that, if our money can be utilized, with this madness, that minimum for us and the rest to the cause. What is known as plain living and high thinking. That was the first madness. And the second madness, if there is a God, I should see him. I should talk with him. How many of us are so sincere? I read once that Vivekananda was in search of his master, and he went to different people, and to all of them he put a question, have you seen God? Nobody answered. It seems that Devendranath Tagore was one who told, boy, you have eyes of a yogi. When Vivekananda went to Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, he asked the same question, have you seen God? He said, yes, I see as I see you. Then Vivekananda asked, can you show me? He said, yes, I can show you. But first let us go and bathe. They went to the Ganges. And when Vivekananda took the first plunge into it, what Ramakrishna Paramahamsa did is put his hand on his head and pushed him still down. At that moment, Vivekananda says, people correctly say that he is mad. I did a great mistake in coming to him, and now I am going to lose my life. And then Vivekananda was a very robust and strong man. He came out. And then Ramakrishna Paramahamsa asked, what was your feeling? What was it that you wanted at that time when I was pushing you inside the waters? He said, what? I wanted life. If you have the same feeling to get God, you will get it now. The most easiest thing to know is God, and most unwanted thing for us is to know God. Because if all the teachers of the world, all of them say that God is nearest to us, He is in our hearts, but then why we are not able to find Him? Again, Aurobindo's life gives the answer. No doubt, he could become a trustee to the money. He was unselfish to the core. He could treat India as his mother. But still he felt that he has to work for 14 years, thinking that he has to work for India's freedom. Are you following my thoughts? From 1893, when he joined in Baroda as a teacher, till 1908, when he entered the Alipur ashram, not jail, what happened? That is exactly what is happening to us now. We know what we are supposed to do. We know how to go ahead. But we think that if we are not there where we are, things will go wrong. Got the point? After 14 years of being a teacher, revolutionary, and being dubbed as the most dangerous only man in India, he was known as the only man who is the most dangerous one. If Aurobindo is gone, India is gone. With that level of power and controlling his workers, when he was one fine morning woken up by the police and arrested, the first thought that went in the mind of Aurobindo was, what is this? Oh God, you said I have a mission and I am working for that mission. I am working to liberate India. And now I am being jailed. How can I work? The inner voice said, wait and see. 3 days passed. Suddenly Aurobindo remembered that 10 days back he got an adesha to leave this work of independence, struggle for independence, and go to isolation. And he says at that moment, the ego in me did not allow me to hear that advice. I thought that without me, the entire movement will be lost. Why I am telling? Probably in our lives also we are feeling like that. And what should we do? Go to Alipur. Jail yourself. I don't mean that you should go to a jail or something. What I mean is, what he did in that 1 year of confinement in Alipur gave him many wonderful experiences. And I am sure that anyone who is willing to spend 1 year like that will get all those experiences. Because I have seen many people going through those lifestyle and experiencing those experiences. But before reaching this state of Alipur jail ashram state, Aurobindo was introduced in the technique of pranayama by one Mr. Lele. And 3 days was enough for him to stop his mental process. That was in Baroda. These steps I am enumerating as the steps we will try to practice from today onwards. Let us not say tomorrow. We will do this from today because tomorrow we don't know. So this pranayama technique, this breathing process is for many yogis the culmination point, but for Sri Aurobindo as it is the starting point. What I want to convince you again, though you are already convinced, that Aurobindo's yoga starts where all other yogas, including Gita, ends. But to this state of understanding and perfection, we have to exert very hard. The first thing we should learn is how to breathe properly. And unfortunately, many people think that they know how to breathe. And you go to a yogic teacher, immediately you will know that you are not breathing at all. You just don't know how to breathe. In Gita, 4th chapter, these pranayama techniques are given in great detail. And these pranayama techniques are now developed to a level of 700 types of pranayama by Yogadas Satsang Society. Anyone heard of it? Paramahamsa Yogananda ji? There, each shloka of Gita is converted into a pranayama. And the entire technique of that master of pranayama, Lahari Mahashaya, is based on utilizing the prana and apana. This in 3 days he finished. That is what I am trying to tell. Before we really understand the jump of Mahabharata to modern Mahabharata, the overmind Krishna into the supermind Sri Aurobindo. This is what I am trying to insist and going on repeatedly telling you, because I think this is a new approach for many of you. The distinction between overmind and supermind. And later, before coming into this supermind and overmind, I will also touch the higher mind, the illumined mind, the intuitional mind, and give you how the integral yoga combines all these three as per Gita as a starting point. But Aurobindo's integral yoga starts after Gita. This you should understand and try to practice in our lives, that have we practiced what Gita has given us. Are we ready for the integral yoga? Aurobindo in his letters, every time he mentions that there is a call. But there are very few warriors and giants and heroes who can accept the call. That is why Manushyanam Sahasreshu Kaschin Mam Vetti Tattvataha. Thousands are called, but few are chosen. And we, as the people who know Aurobindo, are sure that we are the chosen one. Be sure of that first. Let us be proud of that. Let us be egoistic about it. There is no harm when a son says, I am a son. If somebody gets 90 marks and he says that I have obtained 90 marks, it is not ego. He is speaking the truth. And when once you say that you are one of the chosen by the infinite, it is no ego. But the only thing, we have forgotten it, why he has chosen us. Why are we sitting here today and trying to understand these things. Because we are chosen, but unfortunately, we have forgotten the cause for which we are chosen. It sometimes happens. When life after life, the consciousness shifts. Vasansi jirnani yadha vihaya navani ghrunati naroparani tadha sharirani vihaya jirnan anyani sanyati navani dehi. When this happens, unfortunately what happens is our previous births experiences are gone. The same thing happened to Arjuna also. That is why in Gita Lord Krishna says, Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacharjuna tanyaham veda sarvani natvam vetha parantapa ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishvaropi san prakritim swamadhishtaya sambhavami atma mayaya. These lines, ajopi san, belong to the illumined mind and intuitional mind consciousness, uttered by Sri Krishna. Why I am quoting them? That is exactly what we are facing now. Even though we were born many a time with Sri Aurobindo, not only now, whenever Aurobindo and Mother were there in their previous births, be sure that we were also there. That is what is meant by that shloka. If 5,000 years back, Krishna talks to Arjuna like this, what is the use of reading it now? The use is this, that we have the sanctity, the sanction of Lord Krishna, that if Arjuna was born along with Krishna many a times, we were also born many a times with Sri Aurobindo and Mother in our previous births. You say, I don't know, I don't remember. Arjuna also didn't remember. And there is no need to remember that. What is the use of remembering what we did in our previous births? Let us try to understand what we are supposed to do now. Let the gone years be gone. From today, with this conviction, we start our understanding of Gita first, and then what we are supposed to do to be a co-worker in the integral yoga format. So this conviction am I able to give you, that whenever we are born, if we are born with Sri Aurobindo now, it means that many a times we were born with Sri Aurobindo, and naturally we were guided by him. And it is his unseen hand that has called us all together. Wherever there is a Sri Aurobindo group, either as an ashram or in an association or somebody interested in his literature, let us be very sure that he or they were with Aurobindo previously and also now, because Sri Aurobindo is still on planet Earth in India after December 5th, 1950. I will quote Mother later. Why I am stressing at this point is, because Aurobindo is not visible physically, let us not think that he has left this planet Earth. He is still continuing his integral yoga. And the integral yoga's effect, when we understand, we will find how the software industry now, how the radioactivity and the atom bombs were all part and parcel of the physical descent of the truth consciousness. An ordinary element, an atom, when the truth consciousness descends in it, it becomes radioactive. But we are not able to correlate radioactivity with integral yoga. We should. So in the Alipur jail, after practicing pranayama in Baroda and unable to understand his true mission in life, when he was arrested, he cried out, "Oh God, what happens to my mission?" He said, "You are not hearing." 10 days before the arrest, Aurobindo was given an adesha to stop all these activities. He said, "No, I won't." Similarly, all of you who can leave the responsibilities and come over to this side of activities. You need not go to Pondicherry or some other place. In your house, can you be a lamp of integral yoga? For that, the first integration we have to do is know the breathing techniques. So Lahiri Mahashaya and Paramahamsa Yogananda ji are only a ray of Sri Aurobindo, who told that there is not only one type of pranayama, but there are 700 types of pranayamas, each Bhagavad Gita shloka giving you a pranayama technique. So this integral yoga, let us try to understand, as I'm going to give you, that in Sri Aurobindo all these masters merge. The pranayama masters, the Paramahamsa Yogananda technique, all this merge, so that great group of believers in pranayama, the Kriya Yoga techniques, must be involved into our integral yoga. That is what I want to tell you. Let this integral yoga be real integration of all the various types of masters which India has given to us, knowing fully well that they as a separate institution are and will be guided by Sri Aurobindo himself. That is what was written in his Samadhi. Am I able to make my point clear? So we should know what is pranayama. And before we go to pranayama, let us try to understand some basic concepts of yoga given by Sri Aurobindo in his synthesis of yoga. In his synthesis of yoga, Aurobindo says that we are triple in nature. The sthula, made up of Annamaya and Pranamaya koshas, the Manomaya, and then the Manomaya, Aurobindo says it as Sushma Sharira, and then the Karana Sharira again made up of two bodies, Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya. So these triple aspects of human life, the Annamaya and the Pranamaya, must first come under our control. And then this Annamaya and Pranamaya koshas, which Mother Prakriti has evolved fully. All of us have a fully evolved Annamaya kosha, and all of us have fully evolved Pranamaya kosha. Then Aurobindo says that the subtle body, the mental body, the Manomaya kosha is now being evolved. And in this process of evolution of the mental body, Aurobindo gives us 4 states plus 1. The first state is known as the higher mind. The second state of the mind or a mental body is known as the illumined mind. The third one is known as the intuitional mind. The fourth one is the overmind. And when you reach the overmind, you are ready for the descent of the supermind. So these are the 4 states. You should first reach the higher mind, then you should reach the illuminating mind. Then we should reach the intuitive mind. And then we should reach the overmind. And this overmind level was brought to the planet Earth on November 24th, 1926, which is known as the Siddhi Day. So I beseech all of you, because we were together with Aurobindo from life after life, reaching this state of overmind is very easy for us. The only thing is we should know where to look and how to go about. But before going into this Siddhi Day, let me tell you the importance of certain Sankhya Yoga numbers. There were 24 people present on that day. It was November 24th. And there is a great organization known as Gayatri Parivar, which is based on these numbers. Om Bhur Bhuvasva Tat Savitu Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat is one of the foremost mantras of integral yoga given by the Vedic seers. This number 24 and the 24 hours of the day, if we can utilize properly, doing three things as Aurobindo advised. First, you should have an aspiration, and then you should have a rejection, and then you should have surrender. This is the Tripada Gayatri. In this Gayatri mantra, if you can look into it, we can see the depths of Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga. That is another organization which has to be integrated into the Aurobindo Society, the Gayatri Parivar. The first one, that of breathing techniques. Without knowing the breathing technique, we can't grow, because our pranamaya koshas are completely impotent. We just don't know that we have a pranamaya kosha. And Aurobindo says that our nervous system is the carrier of the prana. All of our nervous system, we just even don't know what our nervous system is made of. But when you look to the endocrinology system, we find that all our nervous ganglia are made up of very clear-cut 7 glands. We have the pineal gland, which in the Pranamaya Kosha corresponds to the Sahasrara. We have the pituitary gland, which in the Pranamaya Kosha corresponds to the Ajna Chakra. We have the thyroid gland, which corresponds to the Vishuddhi Chakra. Mind you, I am not telling that the glands are chakras, but I am telling they correspond. They are related. So this brings us to another integration which we as students of Aurobindo philosophy should do, is to know the endocrinology. It is now a medical system, but previously it was an occult system which was known as the Kundalini Yoga and the Hatha Yoga. So this is also to be integrated into our lives. So the totality of the Aurobindo concept of yoga, we are forgotten. We are not able to understand that it is not just Sri Aurobindo who is important. It is the integration aspect of it which is important. And he proved it in his Alipur jail ashram, all these things. He did the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the Patanjali Sadhana, and mind you, the Samadhi state of Patanjali is only an illumined mind state. And let us understand the greatness of the organization of which we are part and parcel, where the great Patanjali system has delegated to a low level of illumined mind. But we have to read them. We have to practice them. In Baroda, people used to wonder that every month Aurobindo used to get great parcels, big parcels. Do you know what was contained in those books? Every month, 80% of his salary was spent on books. And do you think that just Aurobindo bought them and kept them in the library without opening them for months and months? Once I went to Theosophical Society in Guntur and I asked for Secret Doctrine. Do you know what they said? We have not read it. We have not touched it. And you are not even a member of Theosophical Society. You can't understand it. The integration. I have integrated the great Lahiri Mahashaya as the first stage of Aurobindo, where in Baroda he practiced pranayama and reached a quiet mind. And why I am stressing on this repeatedly is, Aurobindo always told that until and unless you have a quiet mind, you cannot progress in integral yoga. So just if you can follow the events of Aurobindo and just follow them in your lifestyle, you will become Sri Aurobindo. Because if you read chemistry, you become chemist. If you read physics, if you become physicist. If you read medicine, if you become doctor. If you do integral yoga, you must become Sri Aurobindo. And then he will be proud of us. It is not just paying a blind reverence, saying that he is a great man. You be him, because Brahmavit, Brahma eva bhavati. One who knows Brahma becomes Brahma. One who knows Aurobindo must become Aurobindo. Can you not do that? Under his guidance. So the first is, let us know the breathing techniques, and especially let me tell you, in the breathing techniques, the breathing in and breathing out is not important. The Kumbhaka is important. The Kevala Kumbhaka is important, where you either the breath is inside you or the breath is outside you. You are able to follow this? In breathing pattern, there are actually 4 levels. One is an inspiration, and we know the expiration. But between these two, there is 2 silent points, which is known as the Antar Kumbhaka and the Bahya Kumbhaka, and the real integration occurs there. Mind you, again I am telling you, if you want to be a real integral yoga practitioner, concentrate not on your breathing, but where the breath has stopped going inside and then it comes back. That turning point where the active inspirational stage is really turned into a passive expirational stage. That point is what is known as Kutastha. And that is one of the points which Aurobindo advised to meditate and concentrate to practice integral yoga. Even though for many of us and many of his letters, he always advised to practice integral yoga at the heart, but he has given 2 other centers, the eyebrow center and the head center. The eyebrow center is what I am now telling you in this pranayama. The breath is going in, it goes there into the eyebrows, something happens there. And again, it turns back. So one integration, that are the pranayama techniques. Other integration, understanding the Gayatri Mantra as one of the methodologies of practicing integral yoga. As Gayatri Mantra is being practiced since all these crores of years, is not integral yoga practiced by that mantra. But once you have this integral yoga theory with you, you can integrate the Gayatri Mantra with integral yoga. And then the third integration, what I am talking about, is the integration of our ancient Hatha Yoga techniques, asana techniques, pranayama techniques, chakra workouts, as the modern websites talk about it. If you want the modern approach towards endocrinology, the Shat Chakras, all these have to be integrated into the integral yoga pattern of daily life. He did it in Alipur jail, and when he was doing this sadhana, in the state of the illumined mind, he was wondering, is levitation possible? And suddenly, up he went. You got the point? There is a state of mind, which is known as the illumined mind, where you get answers for your questions. A scientist asks a question, somehow in his experimental stage he reaches the illumined mind, and there the intuition dawns. You understand the terminology. He is in the illumined mind, but intuition dawns. And he gets a formula, something he is working throughout his life. This integration of Patanjali Yoga Sutras is one of the major achievements of Aurobindo in the 1 year Alipur jail, and in the records of his yoga techniques he mentions this very clearly. Unfortunately, many few people must have gone through these records of yoga. There are 2 volumes of Aurobindo's yoga. Since 1982, almost 1948 or so, the records are available of what sadhana he did. And there this culmination of Patanjali Samadhi Yoga, he discusses it as a state of mind. In this state of mind you can very easily get by observing your breath. Just see the breath going in and see the breath coming out. This is the real Gayatri. That is what I am telling to you, the integration of the Gayatri Parivar. My physical master in this life. You are following the integrations of the masters, the pranayama techniques integrated, the Shat Chakras integrated, the Gayatri Mantra and the Gayatri Parivar integrated. And then in Bhagavad Gita, we have very clearly 3 yogas mentioned. As Sri Aurobindo says, one is the yoga of head, what is known as Jnana Yoga, and the other is the yoga of actions, Karma Yoga, and the other is the yoga of bhakti. These 3 processes of yoga, the yoga practiced by mind, Jnana Yoga, the yoga practiced by the physical body, Karma Yoga, and the yoga practiced by emotions, Bhakti Yoga. And these 2 yogas, Bhakti Yoga, is beautifully found in the lives and group of workers of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Shirdi Sai and Satya Sai. They have to be integrated. This is the massive integration which if you can do, wonders can happen. Not sitting isolated in our ivory towers, but let us go to those groups and let them understand that there is something higher. If you are breathing, if you know the pranayama, what just happens is, you will be healthy, you have a very good nervous system. Your Annamaya and Pranamaya Kosha will be working correctly. For integral yoga, this is a must. A A healthy mind and a healthy nervous system is an essential thing. And Vivekananda, who guided Aurobindo's starting integral yoga techniques, just he pushed Aurobindo towards integral yoga. That's all. Very clearly, Aurobindo mentions in his records that Aurobindo told, Vivekananda told him about the truth consciousness possibility. That's all. He indicated a possibility and Aurobindo realized it. But this possibility is because Vivekananda is also known as a patriot saint. The love towards the mother country. Our present education completely misses it. We just don't know how to love our individual parents, forget about how to love a country. So this idea also has to be incorporated by the lives of Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Mission, Ramakrishna Mutt, and also Siddhi Sai and Satya Sai. Because all these teachers, these three groups, especially Ramakrishna Mission, Siddhi Sai and Satya Sai Mission teaches devotion. And that is a part of integral yoga. So these organizations have all to be brought in. So this is the massive work as per the Gita, because all these three, the first 6 chapters of Gita concentrate on Annamaya and Pranamaya Kosha development. The next 6, that is 7th to 12th, concentrate on Bhakti Yoga. And from 13th to 18th, it concentrates on Jnana Yoga. The karma, bhakti and jnana should be in daily life. We should be taught about this as we are being taught arithmetic, history, other subjects. And as you are being awarded a particular degree, when you say you are a BA, all of us understand that you know more than an intermediate student and less than a postgraduate student. Similarly, Sri Aurobindo divided our mental plane into 12 books with 49 cantos. Do you understand to what I am referring to? I am referring to Savitri. This Savitri must become a household name. But first of all, we should realize that this Savitri is a 12-leveled conscious states of mind which are further subdivided into 49 cantos. And for this, we have a very great worker, a selfless worker's life as an example. Hanuman. The most selfless worker, if you can understand, is Hanuman. And he always says that without doing the work of Rama, he has no respite. So with Hanuman we should be able to tell, without doing the work of Sri Aurobindo, we can't live. But what is the work of Sri Aurobindo? Manomaya Kosha, especially the 9th chapter of Gita, the 11th chapter of Gita, and the 18th chapter of Gita is purely Savitri in a nutshell. What Gita gave as a seed in the 9th chapter, 11th chapter, and 18th chapter has given a good molding, a transformation of the mind being possible by reading Savitri. And when I say reading Savitri, I mean reading Savitri, not studying Savitri. You should know the difference between reading and studying. Reading means you read, that's all. Studying, you should read in between the lines. But the greatest service that Sri Aurobindo has done to English language especially is, he made it to the level of Sanskrit. just what Vedas are in Sanskrit, Savitri is in English. And the beauty of Savitri is, every time in integral yoga, when Aurobindo pierced the higher and higher stages of the mind, he rewrote the entire Savitri according to that level of consciousness. That is why there are so many revisions of Savitri. So, in the light of Aurobindo, Savitri is nothing but an expansion of the 9th chapter. What is 9th chapter? Rajavidya, Rajaguhyam. And what is 11th chapter? Vishwarupa. And what is 18th chapter? Moksha Sannyasa. And the entire format of integral yoga lies in the fact that we do not want liberation. Aurobindo did not do all these practices because he wanted something for himself. Not because he wanted liberation, but he wanted to uplift the consciousness of planet Earth, especially the human beings. So in this light, when you read Savitri, you remember there are certain single sentences with a full stop. Those are the mantric sentences. You just read those sentences without understanding, just as we do the mantras without understanding. For example, we have the Bija mantras. They don't have any meaning, it is only the sound. And the Srivijja mantra, Kaye Lahrim, Hasakaha Lahrim, Sakala Lahrim, Shrim, technically it has no meaning, but it molds your consciousness. Similarly, reading Savitri is enough to understand and reach the heights of integral yoga. But when I say this, many people misunderstand and start taking Savitri book and going on reading. No. Before that, your Annamaya Pranamaya koshas must be perfectly tuned. The easiest way, which Aurobindo advises us, is 3 words, and with this I will finish my approach towards today's lecture. The first aspect of Aurobindo is concentrate on your mind, heart always. You try to understand concentration. Concentration doesn't mean that you sit and I'm looking at my heart, I'm looking at my heart, I'm not. Concentration is something which the 9th chapter says, Ananya Chinta. Ananyas Chintayanto Mam Ye Janaha Paryupasate Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam Yogakshemam Vahamyam. The mother takes care of us if we have Ananya Chinta. One example which my master used to give for Ananya Chinta is, suppose a son has gone to the front fighting, and one day the mother receives a telegram that he is coming home. From that day onwards, the mother will be doing the regular routine work, but where will be her mind? And whenever there is a knock on the door, she runs thinking that the son has come. Similarly, our consciousness must be at the heart, or more appropriately towards the heart, continuously, all the 24 hours. And then what does Aurobindo say? You allow the power to descend. That we don't do. Our egos, our personal thinking, thoughts obstruct us. For this, what does the 18th chapter say? Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam raja aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shucha. It doesn't mean that you should leave the responsibilities. It means the only dharma for you is what the mother says. That is what we forget. Many people very easily take refuge in saying that the God has said, Sarva Dharman Parichedya, Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. Okay, I remember him. No responsibilities. Integral yoga is not so easy. It is something very hard. The second point is, when you are concentrating on the heart and aspiring for the mother, you have to reject certain things which belong to the egocentric thoughts. Just as the Arjuna Vishada Yoga was an egocentric thought. He knew that the mission for his birth and Krishna's birth was this fight. But exactly when the time came, what does he say? I renounce. I don't need this bloodshed. I don't need this kingdom. How noble it sounds, but it is not noble. Similarly, when concentrating in the heart and aspiring for the mother's grace, you should be able to reject your self-ego-centered thoughts and actions. It takes time. But Aurobindo says, after this aspiration and rejection also, you should do one more thing. You should surrender. Surrender to what? Surrender to that power. But how do you surrender? It is not an intellectual surrender. It is not an emotional surrender. It is not a physical activity surrender, but an integral surrender, where your actions, emotions and thoughts come aligned with the divine power. And to understand these things and these alignments, on December 5th, 1950, Sri Aurobindo made a great sacrifice. Probably the only sacrifice of that level which I have read of, where even though physical immortality was guaranteed to him, let me repeat these words. Aurobindo's integral yoga assures physical immortality. Again I am telling you, physical immortality is a possibility. And both Aurobindo and mother realized it. But first, Aurobindo renounced physical immortality. If you can hear the words of the mother in the last moments, when she rushed to Aurobindo's feet, she said, he has decided to leave, nothing can be done now. So the decision is like the Ichamrityu. He just wanted to leave the physical body and he left. It is not that the time has come and is gone because he is beyond time. And then what did he do? Since 1950, for 49 years, Sri Aurobindo remolded Savitri. This you can find in mother's writings, especially after 1950, in Sat Prem's books, especially The Man, one of the books of, not Sat Prem, the German writer. Right. There you get all these things. So, the reason for Aurobindo to leave this physical body is because the physical body is an obstruction for many subtle energies, especially the pranic energies. And from 1950 onwards, he molded it till 1999. For 49 years, he molded Savitri. And that truth consciousness, if you can understand what truth consciousness is nothing but what Aurobindo used to say as supermind. Both are one and the same. This truth consciousness is fighting alone the Mahabharata after the Mahabharata of the overmind in 5,000 years back. Can you understand that? There Arjuna was there to help him. And now, with this vast people who are interested in occultism and spiritualism, not at all helping him. So this lecture particularly I want to make you understand is, Gita is not finished. Savitri also is not finished. The work is going on. Have you the eyes to see it? Can we try to see it? And if you see it, and if you understand that the revision, not revision, but the revision of Savitri in its 49 cantos happened in India from 1950 to 1999, you can understand the great importance given to 2K. You understand? 2000 year was supposed to be a great momentous year, but unfortunately we don't understand what the momentous is. The Savitri was revisioned not in physical plane, but in the astral plane, the vital plane. And after that, the first 7 years of 2007, the Savitri book number 2 and 1 are rewritten in the mental plane. And now this class is specially maintained for those of you who can feel this responsibility. Can we join hands with Sri Aurobindo to revision Savitri on mental plane from 2007 onwards? Thank you.
Thank you, Master. If anyone has any questions, he or she may kindly ask Master now. We only have 10 minutes at our disposal.
That without Gita and practicing the teachings given in Gita, we cannot practice independence. And in Gita, there is an integration of 3 yogas: the head, heart, and the body. Actions. Okay? Got it?
I just want to ask about Savitri SS. When you try reading the book, when from chapter 1 to the last page, we do not understand the language. I mean, how is it going to affect our consciousness and how is it imply to the individual?
A very relevant and pertinent question.
Should I read the book and concentrate?
No, I should have covered it, but seeing the time, I said okay, next time. But since you are asking, there are 2 types of sounds. One is known as the speech, where the meaning is conveyed by words. You understand the word, then only you can understand it. If you know the English language, you can understand English. If you know Telugu language, you can understand Telugu. But there is another type of language which is based on vibrations only on vibrations. For example, modern science has discovered the place we have put the electrode. This particular electrical vibration is allowing you to see the past, see your emotions. Got the point? Vibrations only. Electricity has no language. But in the brain, it sets up a particular vibration and you are able to see some past instance depending upon the location of the vibration. What Sri Aurobindo experimented in Savitri in English is, he developed that methodology of creating sound vibrations where meaning is not important. The uttering of the sound is important.
So when you read Savitri in this spirit, don't try to understand what is written in it. Don't try to. You just read it and you will intuit what Aurobindo wanted to say. Got the point? But before you want to intuit, you should go to the higher mind and the illumined mind, and there the yoga practices are necessary. So you should go on practicing the yoga, the pranayama techniques, and go on reading Savitri, and somewhere you will come to the equity level, everywhere you will understand. But never try to understand Savitri literally. Don't try to read the words, read in between them. Clear? But the goal to understand Savitri is intuitive mind. Reach that mind. And that is where I am asking all of you to join hands to prepare a set of practical meditation and kriya techniques so that we are sure that we are reaching the higher mind, we are reaching the illumined mind, we are reaching the intuitive mind. And this is possible if you read Aurobindo's books and Mother's books.
You say that on Siddhi day, the overnight has descended on the earth. Even before that day, there were so many enlightened souls and so many rishis. Were they not in that state?
They were, but they never tried to bring that state to common humanity. That is where Aurobindo differs with us. Every sadhaka was, let me say, selfish in one way. They wanted their own improvement, reaching higher and higher and higher levels. But nobody thought of bringing down those levels to a common man. So that is where Aurobindo differs with all others.
Still, though it is not understandable who the mother is and what is her action in Sri Aurobindo yoga.
In India, there are two parts of sadhana. One is the Vedic tradition and the other is the Tantric tradition. The synthesis of yoga, Aurobindo very clearly explains these points. But for this moment, you just please accept that there is a static process of yoga and a dynamic process of yoga. The Aurobindo's yoga is a static process, the Vedantic process. The mother's yoga is the tantric process. And that is why when we talk about mother and Aurobindo, you can say Aurobindo is the unmanifest mother and mother is manifest Aurobindo. Probably I confused you more. There are two aspects in nature, there is no third aspect. One is static and other is dynamic. This you can understand. What we know as in science as potential energy and kinetic energy. Is this clear? Mother is the kinetic energy and Aurobindo is the potential energy. And both has to go together, just as the North Pole is also. You break a magnet, you cannot separate the North Pole and South Pole again. The magnet will have a North Pole and South Pole. Similarly, they are inseparable. Aurobindo and mother are inseparable. But when I say Aurobindo and mother are inseparable, please remember I am not talking about their physical bodies. I am talking about their levels of consciousness. Or in another way, you can say that Aurobindo is above supermind at higher levels and mother brings that supermind towards the lowest physical act. That was her main work since 1970. Since 1950, till she left her body, bringing the truth consciousness to physical atoms. More confused? But read in these lines. The answer is clear. One is static and the other is dynamic. Aurobindo used to sit quietly, developing potential energy, and mother used to use that potential energy to creative kinetic. You are a student of science or arts?
I'm a student of commerce.
Calm.
Business ethics.
No, I'm not ridiculing you, but in commerce you can say that Aurobindo is in the locker, the treasure in the locker, and mother is the ornaments you bring out of the locker and wear, but still they belong to her. Clear?
But when people asked Sri Aurobindo about the mother, he gave an answer and wrote the little book, The Mother.
Yes.
So that explains.
Explain. No, I just wanted to tell you that.
Yes.
Because without mother, there is no dynamic Aurobindo. Only when mother came, the ashram developed. Both are inseparable. And if you want a bit more, as she has said, read the book Mother, where the Mahalakshmi aspect, the Mahasaraswati aspect, the Maheshwari aspect, and the Mahakali aspect, are the aspects of the higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, and over mind. Where when you talk about mind, it is Aurobindo. When you talk about Maheshwari, Mahasaraswati, Mahalakshmi, it is Mother. You read those books? Study those books now. Don't read them. And whenever possible, we will read it. I don't want this type of lectures. We will have a study group. Okay? The website is very easily available. We will have a study circle in the internet. Soon. Soon means maybe today or tomorrow.
One basic question. As you and I know, there are two types of cells. One is the prokaryotic cell, which is known as the most primitive cell. And the other one is the eukaryotic cell, which is known as a highly evolved or highly well-developed cell. Both the cells are have negative and positive charges, which we call it as electrolytes. Likewise, throughout the body, there are the electric cells are there. Electrolytic activities are going on. But how you can give a relevance to the Aurobindo philosophy and the mother's philosophy? Kinetic energy, static energy, dynamic energy. Likewise, you are giving a reference to this activity of the electrolytic cells. I don't think this philosophy will not enter into the science of this positive and negative.
First of all, we started one thing, that we are living in energy ocean as energy points. We always forget that we are points of energy living in various levels of energy, oceans of energy. Specifically, there are three basic energies which are known as Fohat, the Mula Prakriti, the Prana, and the Kundalini. The modern science has understood the Mula Prakriti aspect, the electric effects of energy. Now modern science is working wonders basing on the electric effects, and all our brain working and nervous energy and nervous outlets and movements of muscles, all this are nothing but in simple analysis, electrical impulses. And these electrical impulses come from sun as light energy. And this light energy, the Mula Prakriti or the electrical energy, as scientists know, are interconvertible. Electrical energy can be converted to mechanical energy can be converted to light energy can be converted to heat energy. So all these Mula Prakriti levels are the electrical impulses of the cells of the human body, however complex it may be, are interconvertible. But controlling these interconvertible energies is the prana, what Aurobindo calls as vital soul. It also comes from sun. About that, modern science is just having an inkling. It just exactly, even now doesn't know what life is. Even though we talk about biochemistry, biotechnology, bio-meaning life. But actually, what makes you live, we don't know. Our scriptures say that it is prana. But beyond prana also, there is another type of energy which is known as kundalini energy, about which scientists don't know about. About prana they have an inkling. All the medicine is based on the pranic aspects, which they call as biology. But still it is the electrical aspect which is more important. But as I told you, the experiment with prana by Aurobindo, where he could still be outgoing and influent guests, but still live. So, when we want to the relevance of what Sri Aurobindo and modern science has touched, I would advise modern science to read more books on the prana theory as given in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Then only we can discuss about the various aspects. Even though I am a chemistry lecturer and I taught some biochemistry MSc students also. And many times I wonder whether the amino acids and the nucleic acids together form a number 24. And is Gayatri, the expression letter of that Gayatri, is the amino acids and the nucleic acids? These are some questions which I don't know the answer. I have the questions. But still, I think this supposition with which we can start in biochemistry, that the 20 amino acids and the 4 plus 4 nucleic acids, the DNA and RNA, may be the vibrational letters of Gayatri Mantra. Ta may be amino acid, B may be another amino acid, I don't know. But I know certain for one thing, that there is a doctor, a German doctor, Tony Nagel. Anyone of you heard about him? Tony Nagel. He is the great exponent of Mahesh Yogi's meditative, creative meditation. He wrote a book that the entire human body is nothing but the Rigvedic mantras crystallized. He proved it. He proved that our body is nothing but Rigveda mantras crystallized. And now I think we can understand the relationship between the cells and the body.
To say any words of thanks to Master Ji after such a wonderful, thought-provoking, in-depth talk would in fact be a sacrilege. Not merely a sacrilege, it would be height of impudence. I will not even attempt it. But to have you amongst us has been a rare privilege, and especially the very few chosen, those who are here, they are extremely fortunate that we are here. We choose, and Sri Aurobindo Savitri again, they choose the infinite, whom the infinite has chosen. So we are there with Master Ji because we are the chosen few. I could not help Master Ji to think of those particular few lines and pages of Savitri where the celestial sage Narada comes singing down from those dizzy heights of light, where he was singing only the songs of light, and when he came down to this Aparartha, he kept thinking about and singing about, as stated in the lines of Savitri, of chance and fate. Your presence here reminded me that the presence of Narada in the court of Ashwamedha. And what did Sri Aurobindo write when Narada was in the court of Ashwapati? He wrote, and if I recollect the words correctly, pardon me if I am wrong, he sang to them the songs of the lotus heart of love with its luminous vibrations of the 1,000 petals or buds, which quivering sleep veiled with apparent things. This is precisely what has happened to us sadly, Masterji. We are asleep. Truly we are asleep, and we need jolts, not merely implorations. We need perhaps jolts. God knows, and Sri Aurobindo and the Mother willing, one day we'll wake up. We must wake up sooner than later. My heart is too full to say anything more. I just do not want to step into further. I also thank Madhuri ji and Shivaji, Mr. Patel and Rajiv ji, those who have been able to facilitate this momentous visit of Masterji to this Sri Aurobindo complex, which happens to be, Masterji is the state headquarters of Karnataka with 42 centers under it and ever growing. I also thank immensely all the volunteers and the staff of Sri Aurobindo Complex Trust to have organized this function with such a short notice, with such a short time, in such wonderful fashion. And my thanks go out to all those who have come here, all those of you who are here. And again, in Sri Aurobindo's words, our life's repose is in the infinite. It has no end. Its end is in life supreme. Thank you very much. Please go home with carrying Masterji's blessings and the blessings of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Thank you. With this evening's program comes to an end.